Hi.
Hi.
You did it.
I know, right? I don't even use Instagram, but I did. I figured it out.
Not only is this Lloyd's first Instagram Live, this is Lloyd's first time using Instagram. That is amazing. Like, Major, let's all do some hearts for Lloyd. That's an accomplishment. We have people who have joined who have spent many years on Instagram, and still the live was a little bit hard.
Right on.
So glad you're here. And just so everyone knows, the account that Lloyd is on right now, it's just a guest account. So if you click on it and you're like, oh, I can't wait to follow Lloyd, he's not going to be posted.
No, sorry.
That's okay. You've got important things at home, important people to tend to. So I fully respect that. So excited we haven't seen each other in.
It's been a few years now.
It's been a few years.
Yeah.
I think the last time you saw me, I had a bowling ball strapped to my stomach.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then you joined the club, and it's crazy. It's so crazy.
Oh man, it's crazy. It's the hardest thing that you'll ever do, but at the same time, it's the most rewarding. Like literally, it is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Like I can't even stress that to anyone who doesn't have kids enough. Yeah. I'm like, if you want to have kids, know that it's really hard, but know that your life will never be the same, and it will be amazing. And it's the weirdest thing. It's like, you have this amazing love and Stockholm syndrome for your child.
Yeah. And it's weird because, like, as time goes on, you think, oh, I could probably do this again. Like, no big deal.
Right.
Like, it does get it's still hard in a way because your whole life surrounds around this person. But in a sense, you're like, I could probably do this again. And then, bam, you're in it again. You're like, what did I do? Like,
oh gosh.
There's two, like, I don't know.
Don't do it. Don't tell me that. Oh my gosh.
But
okay.
if it means anything to you, we're already talking about the third. So it's like it's not that scary in the sense that we're done. But
we're talking about the second right now. So I'm just like, all right.
Yeah, that's around the time. So
oh man.
I hear you. Okay, so this goes really, really fast.
Okay.
So I'm gonna dive right in. Just talk a little bit about your background, your history, how you got involved in the industry, and you had a really cool opportunity too. So we can talk a little bit about the the ABC fellowship. So take it away.
Oh, okay. So I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. Like that's where I started, and a friend of mine and we wrote and directed a feature together and thought that we were going to be wildly successful, and we weren't. And the feature was, to put it mildly, terrible. But it served as our film school.
Do you still watch it?
I have all of the stock footage that we took and everything. Like I have all of our stock with me, and the hard drives. Oh, I think I still have the hard drives. So we'd have to relink everything, and it's an old version of Final Draft. So God knows if it would ever work again.
Yeah, that's
but no. So we did that. Thought it was going to go somewhere. It didn't. It just turned out terrible. Funny thing to note. You can have bad picture, but you cannot have bad sound. And we had bad picture and bad sound.
I tell this to actors a lot with their self-tapes because, if there's a great performance there, you're sometimes taken out of it if the audio isn't great,
Yep.
Audio is everything.
Oh, yeah. No, sound is everything. We learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So we did that, and then after a little bit, I moved out to California to pursue writing full time. Again, I thought that I was going to get somewhere really quickly. I mean, not that quickly. I'll give myself credit. I was just like, I know it's going to take a little time. Maybe 8 months.
Yeah, right. That sounds reasonable.
It's only going to take 8 months for people to realize how talented and amazing I am. No. So then when we met, that was at the tail end of a long stretch of jobs.
I remember. Yeah.
And eventually I worked in VFX for like several years. And then when I truly decided to follow writing, I got a job as a writer's PA. That's the show that we worked on together, Bates Motel. And yeah, it was funny. I met the showrunner, Carrie. She's amazing. And Carlton's also amazing too. Let's not.
Yes.
But
okay.
they're both amazing. But I remember Carrie was just like, okay, well, you know, I like you. I think we could work together, but I'm gonna have to read you. And so
she's gonna have to read you.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah. So she read my stuff and she was like, okay, so yeah, you're good enough to be my PA.
Wow, I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, no. Most of the time, if you want to like be a writer or work your way up or something like that, you try and start out as an assistant.
Yeah.
And most showrunners want to make sure that the assistants working on the show actually want to write.
Right.
And so, as such, part of your interview process may be having to put forward a script and have it read by the showrunner to see if they're like, oh, okay, you're working on things, you got something, let's see if we can carry it further.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So then you got in the very prestigious ABC fellowship.
Oh man, that was like.
I remember when you were applying for that, and I was kind of like, isn't that the one thing where it's like 1 million people and they pick?
Yeah. Yeah, it was that thing. It was crazy because like Bates was ending and I was like, I need a job. I got to figure something out.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let me apply to the fellowships and the writing programs. Let's see if we can get something going there. And I remember applying to NBC and I missed the deadline by literally 2 minutes. I was actually like, I was copying and pasting my stuff in as the deadline came and went. And I was like, oh my God, all that work for nothing. And then I decided to go for the Disney ABC program, even though I knew like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah,
you know, like thousands of people apply to that thing. And like, I think the year that I got in, like only 8 people are selected. It's just like, insane. So that was nuts. But yeah, like, I got in. It was crazy. It was like, and it's amazing because getting in doesn't just mean, oh, hey, I have this opportunity. It means that someone else validated your writing and validated what you're trying to do. So that was really cool.
And there's a lot of discussions. There's a length. Isn't there like an interview process?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That
interview process. I swear to you, I have never been so nervous in my life. Not even at the birth of my child was I that nervous. I vaguely
remember you talking about it and my heart rate went up.
Oh man. Oh my gosh. Like I remember like, so we had to do, like, what do you have to do in that? Now I'm thinking back because it's been a few years, but like you have to do a mixer. They used to do the mixer at night. They used to serve alcohol to loosen everybody up. Well, no, it was cool. And then the year that they started, like our year, they were just like, oh, okay, well, we're going to do it in the morning now. No mimosas, no, just straight up early morning. Get yourself some coffee and some orange juice. Yeah. Have a bagel. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it is a little weird because you got to you have to talk to everyone. You get rated by and you're meeting tons of executives, tons of staffers and stuff. And you're being rated and judged the entire time. It's
like The Bachelor. You have to steal people's time.
Yes. No, that is precisely what you have to do. Yeah. It is the weirdest feeling. It's the weirdest experience. But everyone completely understands that that's the way it works. Yeah. So no one's really upset when you kind of just insert yourself into somebody's conversation.
Right.
So yeah, there was a lot of that. There was a ton of that. And so from what I understand, all of those executives will rate you. Mm-hmm. And then you have to go through, after that, you do round robin interviews. So you meet with all the executives in the program. You have 2 different meetings and you're 2 different sets of interviews, and they each last maybe 3 to 5 minutes at a time. I think maybe it's 5 minutes. Okay. It's 5 minutes. Okay. Supposed to be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And so you go through that. You're meeting with a couple of execs, and I mean, it's just they're asking you stuff, and you're trying to provide accurate answers, and you're just trying to show why you have a unique perspective. You know, like that's what everybody's looking for, is a unique perspective.
Right.
And then so after you go through those, we had like 2 of those, and then like you come back another day, and then you have to do your formal panel review. And what that is that like that's like every executive and the creative talent and development department
At that point,
is going to be there.
Are in the mix?
Dude, let me go around the room and count, because it was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I think it was like 9 other people, 9 to 10 other people in the room. It was honestly, it was kind of like a writer's room in that there are like a bunch of you sitting around a table. It's just that only you are talking. Like they're asking you questions. The other thing, I think in my year, you had to pitch an hour of episodic television for a show that was already on. So not only did you have to write a pilot and a spec, but then you had to come up with another episode of, or another thing of episodic television to pitch in your formal panel review. And for that pitch, you get like 5 minutes. And that's it.
Do you know much about pitching at that point? I mean,
only what I'd seen in the room. So I was lucky in that I worked in a writer's room, and I had watched them, like just being next door to the room. Like I got to listen, I got to watch. Every now and then I got to sit in and see how the process goes. But so I knew it in that superficial way. My friends kind of coached me along a little bit and how that you should go about doing it and the different notes that you should hit. And that's kind of what I did. Like I think I was editing my pitch literally up until the moment I walked through the doors. Like I was editing that pitch, like just crossing things out or like going like this and like. And for a while, everyone was just like, "Oh, you should just memorize your pitch." And I'm like, "That's insane! That is insane!"
Yeah. I can't even.
And I tried to memorize the pitch, but no, man, that did not work. So I was just like, you know what? Like I looked at it this way. I was like, in the room when you pitch, you either have the board, you have notes, you have your own notes. I was like, if they can't handle me having notes for my own pitch, then I'm just like, then screw it. I don't care. So I went in there with my notes. I made sure to like not look at them that much. I had most of it memorized. And, you know, you just go around the table and you make sure you're making eye contact with every person. And, you know, hopefully you connect with people.
Yeah.
And luckily, in my case, that's what happened. Yeah. So that was cool.
So then you got in. And were you immediately assigned on The Good Doctor, or was that
no? Like when you get into the program, you still have to go through staffing season. It's just that the program acts as your agent.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So for me, it was like that. I met on several shows and everything, and it really, you still have to get hired by the showrunner and everything. As a matter of fact, for the year that you're in the program, you have to suspend all contact with your representation. Well, I mean, not all contact, but they can't try and secure you work or anything like that. That's completely against the rules.
Gotcha.
So while you're in the program acts as your agent. So it's for the shows that are on, you know, ABC, any kind of ABC network.
Right.
You know.
Did you have representation before getting in the program?
I didn't. And that was the other cool thing about the program is that it actually helps you to get representation because, you know, it what's the word? I'm looking for the words. It provides,
well, they know that you have a really big studio behind you. So, you know. Right. Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing. It helps to elevate your, I don't know, star power, whatever it is. But write up and stuff like that. So people see your name out there. And that's really cool. And you're associated with, like what you said, it's like a very prestigious program. So it's really cool.
Yeah. So what?
But yeah.
Sorry, did you say you didn't immediately go on The Good Doctor?
No. So you take meetings just like you would any staffing season. And now, granted, it's beneficial to you that you're in the program because they're like, oh, okay, so ABC already has vetted this person. They like them. All I really have to do is see if I like them. And if they're good enough, then I'll just put them on my show.
Right.
And so met on a few shows. A couple didn't go. And I wasn't going to get the chance to meet on The Good Doctor. Because I don't know if they hadn't reached out yet with because of my sample or something. Something happened, and I wasn't going to get the opportunity. And I was just like, okay, I thought that I literally had the perfect sample for that show. But I was like, okay, well, if it's not in the cards, it's not in the cards. And that's really what you have to do. You just have to roll with things.
Yeah.
And you know, like just keep going. That was the thing. I'm just like, okay, so I'm not going to get on the show that I really wanted to get on. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm still going to write. I'm still going to be on a show. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, like right as I was getting out of another meeting, they were like, hey, so you got a meeting on the show? And I was like, oh, you know. Yeah. And so I met with the showrunner. Actually, somebody else in the program had already met on the show. And I guess they didn't click or something. Yeah. I don't know what happened or whatever. They just kept looking, and they finally made it to my sample. And so I met with the showrunner, David Shore, who's also amazing. Also met with Aaron Gunn, who is a development exec at Shorzy Productions. And yeah, like they were awesome. We had a great meeting, but after the meeting, I had no idea where I stood. Like it was just one of those weird things. And I remember I was going home, and I lived in Hollywood at the time, so parking was a nightmare. So I remember having to like switch cars or something, and I get a call on my phone, and it's the director of the program calling me, and he was like, "Hey, sorry, we ended up having to cancel some of your other meetings and blah blah blah." And I was just like, "Oh, shit, sorry." Like, sorry, excuse my language. No, I was like, "Oh man," like I was like, "That's terrible." Okay, you know, well, let's keep going. What happened? And he was like, well, the Good Doctor called, and they wanted you on board. And I was like,
that quickly?
Come on, man. Yeah, literally the same afternoon, like right after we'd had the meeting. And I walked out of there not knowing which way was up, if I even had a shot. And like literally that afternoon, they're like, yeah, come on board. And I was like, oh, you know, I was like, yeah, mind blown. And then that was kind of like, I mean, getting into the program was the beginning, but getting staffed on a show was also another beginning. And so that was
100%. So, what was, if any, what were some growing pains as like a first-time writer? Maybe some things that you weren't prepared for that came about?
Well, I mean, so the program prepares you for a great number of eventualities.
Okay.
Like, you know, they make sure that you go through mock writers' rooms and stuff like that, especially for the people that have never actually been in a writer's room.
Yeah.
Like, so that's very helpful for them. A lot of us had actually been assistants already and stuff.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so they prep you. You go through like a lot of different meetings and things like that with people giving you advice and stuff. But the biggest growing pain is that you don't know what it is until you are doing it.
Yeah.
Like you don't, like it's hard to explain to someone until you're actually in the situation. And then you're like, oh, so this is what it is. So one of the things is, you know, making sure your pitches are pointed and succinct. You know, and then the other thing is broad, like, right, and making sure that you're not taking up too much air in the room, because as a staff writer, let's be honest, you're not doing the heavy lifting. That is for the upper levels and things like that. Yeah. So they're going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. Your job is to support them and you know, but you know, that's the big thing is realizing that not to take up too much air in the room. But then the other thing that you have to learn is not to talk too little. So it's like this weird thing. If you talk too much, you're taking up too much of everybody's time, especially since your pitches, most of the time your pitches aren't going to be good enough to make it on the board. But sometimes they are, you know, sometimes they are. But then the other thing is if you're too quiet, they're going to be like, you never talk in the room,
Right,
and
right.
and you're not going to get asked back or something
Right.
like that,
It's
you know. So
fine line.
so it's like this weird fine line that you have to traverse that. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what was the casting process like on that show? Did you get to be involved on any
Oh yeah,
creative say when it was your episode? That's awesome.
very
I know
actively
that's
involved.
not always
Yeah.
the case.
No, it's not always the case. Most of the time, that's not the case. And I would say in a lot of cable shows, because of the way that the season goes and everything,
Yeah.
usually a lot of the time, the writer of the episode is not going to be producing that episode because usually your contract is ended by the time they go into production.
Right, that's true.
So unless they want to bring you back on and pay your rate for that time, then usually you're not going to be able to produce your episode on those shows.
Yeah.
In a network show, it just depends on your showrunner too.
Yeah.
So in a network show, like sometimes they'll have you producing your own episode. At least on The Good Doctor, like it was expected that you produce your episodes. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
And it helped that I had already worked on set for years.
Yeah.
So it's not like something that was going to intimidate me or anything like that, because I'm like, I've seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
So
because like I hadn't been used to that particularly. Like I've worked with so many different showrunners. Some showrunners are like, I run the show, y'all just support me, you know, and like, you don't produce your episodes. And I've worked on other shows where I think Carrie was kind of like this. It was like everyone was very involved in the episode, you know. So did you go to set? And yeah, okay.
So for usually what would happen was for one of my episodes I went, and then another episode the person I co-wrote with went, and then it trades off like that. Yeah. So like in the next season I co-wrote 2 episodes, and like for one of those episodes I went, and then the next episode somebody else went. Okay. You know, so but yeah, like you are expected to produce your episodes, and it's fun. It's grueling because you're working set hours, but you know, it's cool, and you know, and it's a lot of work at the same time.
Yeah. So what were some things? I'll start with some things that you might have noticed when it was your episode in terms of being sent casting links and choices. What were some things that you noticed that were things that you responded to? Was it interesting choices that actors made with the words that you wrote, or what were some things that stood out either in a good way or maybe not such a great way?
Good things that stood out were people that made interesting choices. Yeah, that was actually a lot of fun. Like seeing the different choices that people would make. It just you know, it could be like a tiny word like and that was amazing. Just seeing the craft behind acting, like you see it even more when in the casting process, because you see so many different people doing so many different things and taking, you know, a read on the character. You know, like they've got their idea of what the character's about. You have your idea. Hopefully you guys can meet in the middle, or hopefully, you know, my idea wins.
Yeah, I know.
It's not always the case, though. No. It's not always the case. But yeah, like, so we definitely have, in that show, we definitely had say in casting. We would watch down everything. And one of the I don't want to say bad things, but it's just like, a piece of advice would be, when you do a read the words exactly.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so like try and nail it. Even when the casting director tells you it's okay if you don't nail it, because sometimes people will say that. Like sometimes writers will be like, "Oh, it's okay if you don't nail it." Blah blah blah. Try your very hardest to nail it, unless they say, "Oh, we want you to ad lib or bring something a little something extra." In which case, okay, cool. Yeah. You know, but always try and get that dialogue right.
Yeah.
That's one of the big things. Like it's kind of like because part of it is that it takes you out of it when you're watching someone if they didn't, because there are certain phrases in there or something. If you don't hit it right, then it's just like, well, that kind of changes the tone of the scene, and it can change the meaning too.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why it's very important that our best to be safe as best as you can.
Yeah.
You know,
it's interesting to hear that perspective because, you know, oftentimes we tell actors absolutely, you know, try to be one. Oftentimes we're not sticklers, but it's interesting to hear your perspective because I always say, well, you know, we make certain decisions, but at the end of the day, we then send them to you, the writers who write these words for a reason. And so if you're literal, sometimes I kind of play around with what matters most. So it's interesting to hear, you know, from you.
And I mean, I don't want to stifle anyone's creativity. So that's not what that's for. It's just like, if it's possible for you to do like clean takes, do some clean takes. And then if your casting director is okay with it, then maybe, you know, do like a fun take or like a take just for you, you know, kind of a thing, you know, like just like, hey, you know, I wanted to try this. And you know, that's up to you guys. I don't know. I don't want to tell people what to do in your casting sessions, but you know, if your casting director is open to it and you can do like a fun take just for you, then maybe include that one too. Yeah. But for the most part, try and get the words right. Yeah. Don't let it stifle the performance though. If it's just not coming and you can get a better performance the other way, then honestly, you got to go with the performance. Yeah. You know, because that's what we're going to be looking at the end of the day anyway, is the performance. Right. And we'll direct the actor that way. You know, if the performance is amazing, I'm not going to have them redo it because of because I know, you know, but if there's many times I'll have an actor who does like an incredible performance, but there's an important line in there that we missed, and I know we need to hear that. So that will be the direction: is keep everything the same. I like everything you're doing, but we need to hear this specific part the way it's written because of A, B, and C. So that's an often note, you know, that we give. Somebody said, I don't know if you can see these comments coming in. I'm seeing, you see two at a time and then they go away.
It can be a little challenging sometimes to read and talk at the same time. But someone said, what about a button? Are you okay with buttons? Which is where an actor would add, usually it's more in comedy where they would add sort of an ending line to the scene. So you might not see that too much on your... You
don't see it as much in drama.
Yeah,
like you don't really see people putting buttons on it in drama. Yeah. It's
more in comedy. The only times that I've seen it in drama is when like the scene ends and they'll say something like, I really hope so, or you know.
Yeah, for us, we were just like, for us, for the most part, like how we were is just like, just say what's there. You don't have to add anything. It's like, it's okay.
We would have written it.
It's okay. Just thank you, but not necessary.
So that's
but in comedy, I can see how that works.
That's good advice for you. I know with comedy, they do enjoy it and appreciate it, but with drama, that's good advice. Just kind of stick to what's there, because if it's needed, you know, it'll be there.
Right. That's, you know, and just there's nothing wrong with being in the know as to what the guidelines are. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
Exactly.
So.
Did you guys go in the room, or was it all on tape?
Oh, no. A few times we did the room, and then a lot of time it started having to be on tape just because, just time gets you. You know, like you start getting nailed on time, and if you don't have a separate dedicated space, it can be tough, because I think for a little bit in the first season, we used the writer's room. Granted, on that particular show, we would do a lot of independent studies. So we would have a room for the beginning. We'd iron out kind of where we wanted to go for the season, and then we'd do either mini rooms or pick the room back up as needed. So it wasn't too big of an issue to hold casting in there, but eventually it got to the point to where everybody was just so busy. You're cranking out episodes that really all you can do is just watch. It's like, you watch the links on what's it called? Cast it? What's it called? Cast it? Is it Cast it?
Yeah, it's either Cast it or EcoCast.
I think it's Cast it. I think that's the one I'm familiar with. But yeah, you watch those down, and sometimes it's crazy. Sometimes a performance will literally leave you wanting more. Like you're just like you're clicking, and you're like, wait, that was the last one? Like I need to see more of this person, and that usually gets you a callback.
Absolutely.
So
yeah. But that's what I've been telling actors a lot is that, you guys are busy people, and especially with writers who do produce their own episodes, sometimes they're on set and they don't have the time in their prep schedule to attend a casting.
Oh yeah. That was the big thing. When we were in Vancouver, we just you're prepping all day. And then after a long day of prep, this is meetings, you've taken notes on all the script changes you need to do, and you're all this crazy stuff, and then at the end of the day, you get back, and then they're just like, okay, so you got casting to look at, and you're like, okay, let's do it, and depending on how wide we cast the net, you could end up having to watch 20 performances, or and multiple performances from each person. Casting directors try and narrow it down, but sometimes we'll tell them to cast it wide, and you just have to do it. My very first episode, it got cast fairly wide. It wasn't as wide as it could have been, but we didn't find the right person for the guest starring spot. It was literally I think it may have been close to one of the last days of prep. And we were looking that entire time, just reading people, watching, and all that stuff. And then finally, it's funny. I wrote the part, and I kind of based some of his personality. You guys ever seen The Good Place? The character. What's his name? The character. Is it Jason? Is what his name is, the guy from Jacksonville.
I don't know what the character is because I've only seen a couple episodes.
Yeah, it's what? The Good Place is amazing.
I know. I couldn't get into it as much as most people. Everyone kept.
That's fair.
I know.
But I kind of wrote the part based off of similar kind of sensibility, as the Jason Mendoza character, kind of bro,
Gotcha.
easygoing, But in our version, he's a lot more. He's intense because he's a gamer. He's a professional gamer and everything. And then lo and behold, we're casting, and I was like, no. They're everyone wants to be respectful. They're you should really take a look. They don't want to say, this guy nailed it. They don't want to do that. Because they're that's presumptuous. So everyone's just you should really take a look. Right. And so when I got in and I looked, I'm like, holy cow, it's Manny Jacinto.
Wow.
I based some of these personality attributes off of how he plays a certain character, and he's reading for the part, and by God, he nailed it. And so Manny Jacinto ended up being in my episode, and I'm just I can't even believe that, man. That if I wrote that in the script, it would get kicked back, and they'd be like, talk about coincidental.
Right. That's it. All just sometimes clicks. Sometimes.
Yeah. So it was awesome.
That's awesome. So how does it work when you're splitting an episode with another writer? I've always kind of wondered that myself. I assume you guys take different scenes.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on how you do it. Sometimes you're writing with an upper level, and they'll dictate how they like to have it go. So sometimes you'll divide up scenes. Sometimes you'll divide up acts. Sometimes you'll just divide up halves. It's I'll take the first half. Oh, you take the second half. Or, I'll take acts 1, 3, and 5, and you can take 2, 4, and 6.
Okay.
You know, like, so it just all depends. It all runs the gamut, and it could be done scene by scene too. So it just all depends on who you're working with, what they prefer, what you prefer. It can be done in a multitude of ways.
Does the writer that you're paired with, do they ever give you notes, or is that kind of like you just leave that to the showrunner and the execs?
If it's an upper level, then they're going to give you notes.
Okay.
And if it's an upper level, you'll get notes, you'll go back and do it. And even if it's someone at your same level or something like that, it behooves you both to read it and give each other notes and say, hey, this might not jive, or I like what you did here, but this, this part of it, maybe we can tweak this a little bit. Yeah. So it's very collaborative. The entire thing is like so collaborative.
Okay, that's cool. That's interesting. I had a question about that specifically. Oh, so what's the difference of now? So then you moved on to Hightown as a story editor. So what's the difference there, really?
Just as you move up in the room, like as you rank up and everything. Actually, I was a story editor. I worked as a staff writer and a story editor on The Good Doctor, and then on Hightown, I was an executive story editor.
Okay.
So just as you move up, just the level of experience increases and the level of responsibility increases. Like what you're expected to contribute versus what you weren't expected to contribute before. So as a staff writer, you're expected to contribute, but, maybe not as heavily as someone who, has a higher rank. Like you're not going to contribute like a co-executive producer's going to.
Right.
Like that's the kind of person that is probably helping to run the room, Right. But, as you move up, you just gain more responsibility and you're expected to pitch more. Your drafts need to reflect your level and stuff like that. So ideally, you're turning in drafts that are helpful to the showrunner and stuff like that. Yeah. Like just about everybody gets rewritten. Like that's a part of life. You're going to get rewritten.
Right.
But to the extent that you get rewritten can sometimes be in your control. And if you're pretty good at trying to help match the showrunner's voice, then that can be very beneficial for them in that, okay, I see that I've got the script here, but I'm liking what I'm seeing. I only have to do like a few things to this rather than, I need to do a page 1 on this. Like that's those are rough.
I've just recently encountered, I will not be naming names, but I was working on a show where every writer was basically getting a page 1 rewrite.
Oh yeah, and some showrunners are like that.
Yeah.
Like that's just how they prefer to do it. So I'm like, but I mean, you just, like I said, it just doesn't behoove you to be offended over being rewritten. That's the job. Like your job as a writer is to support the showrunner's vision. Right. And what you're giving them, even if they fully rewrite you, at least you gave them a base to go off of. At least they're not starting from scratch.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people have to understand. I think some people get, a little offended at it and stuff like that. And it's like, it's nothing to be offended at. This isn't truly your vision. Like this is the person that has the vision for exactly how that they're going to filter out or even filter in, like, the things that are necessary to make the story click. Yeah. It's just what it is. It's the job.
Fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like actors,
Yeah.
You're not going to get every job. You're not going to, sometimes you're going to get constructive criticism, and that's a good thing,
It is a good thing. It'll tell you where to hit. Yeah. I tried to be an actor at one point, and it didn't work for me. I'm terrible. Terrible.
I did not know this. Ask more about that later. What's your favorite part of the job, and maybe least favorite part? Like, what are the best parts and the worst parts?
My favorite part is the writing. Like when I finally get to sit down and actually write, like I love dialogue. Like that's my big thing is, I love writing dialogue, and I like writing all of it. You know what? Honestly, yeah, that's my favorite part of the job is when I just get to sit and let the characters play in my head and just and and I just type out what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's.
What are the hard parts? Would you say the hard parts are just getting confusing or maybe like unproductive notes from the studio? That's a big complaint that I hear a lot.
I mean, so that can be difficult, but the way that I look at studio notes, even bad studio notes, offer something helpful. And I think that's the way you have to look at it, because it's just like, while the note that they gave you may not be that great, or even their solution that they say, like, maybe try this, maybe that's not the right solution, but what they're telling you is, hey, this doesn't work. Gotcha. Something about this doesn't work. Right. And as the writer, it's your job to get back under the hood of that and figure out why it's breaking down. Is it because you didn't set it up properly, like multiple scenes earlier? Is it because your character's goals aren't clear, from the get-go? Maybe at the top of the scene the goals aren't clear. It's like, it can be a lot of those things, and it's just like people get offended when they get notes and everything. And it's just like, don't be offended when you get notes. The notes are, even if it's a note that you can't necessarily take at the moment, or it's not necessarily, like helping you to come up with it, understand that what that note is saying is, this thing doesn't work. It could be better. Find a way to fix it. And that's just what you have to do.
Yeah, you're right. This is interesting. You can receive questions. Oh, I can't show this. Normally I can display questions on the screen so you can see them, but because we have a fundraiser going, I can't display it. So I'm just it's an interesting question, so I'm just gonna say it out loud. Someone asked, how often do you have to rewrite because of a casting choice that might be different than originally thought? Like, you see this actor storyline or anything because of this new idea or this new casting choice. Yeah, that happens. Every once in a while that happens, where it's just like, like you've written a character a certain way or to look a certain way, and then somebody just catches your eye, or the casting director's just like, hey, I know you didn't necessarily ask for this, but I thought this was a good read. Sometimes that happens where you're just like, oh, that is an interesting take, and that's interesting. I think that this person should be female instead of male, or some of those things happen, or this should be a person of color, or this should be, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of the times, those things happen, and you just roll with it. But yeah, it's not hyper common, but it's nowhere near uncommon. Right. Right. So at the end of the day, we just want good stories and good actors. Right. That's what I tell people all the time. Someone also just mentioned that if they go to donate, it takes them out of the Q&A. I just want to let anyone know who did want to donate. I didn't know that was the case, but we are going to be posting this to IGTV, which I know that means nothing to you, Lloyd.
No, not really.
That's okay.
I just spit out ice everywhere.
If anyone wants to donate and you missed part of the chat, this will be posted again, so you can go back and rewatch. Just wanted to clarify. Don't let that sway your decision of donating. So in case you didn't know, there's a big old movement going on in our world, which is all a good thing, I think. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit. We only have, God, I can't believe we only have I know, we only have 15 minutes or something, right? It's
Whoa,
crazy.
that went by quick.
It goes by really fast. But I just wanted to hear from you. How do you feel like the studios can do a better job of diversifying the room? Besides initiatives of like the ABC, fellowship and things like that. Do you feel like they could do a better job at that?
Well,
what have you noticed?
Yeah, I think having a diverse array of voices is always going to be good, and it always requires an active conversation. It isn't just, we've got this many people, blah, blah, blah. No, it's an ongoing conversation.
Yes.
Society changes all of the time, people change, so as that happens, you need to make sure that you have a variety of voices that are that are reflecting the changes,
Yeah.
you know, that are
Yeah.
happening in society and everything.
Yeah.
So in that regard, I'm like, yeah, it's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Could we be doing more? Yeah, everybody could always be doing more. Like, some of it is with the studios. The studios do a lot with like different programs and everything, and some of it has to do with who's hiring. You know, like a lot of times people hire people that look like them, that think like them. You know,
Yeah.
it's easier. It's shorthand. You know, like it's just like, oh, okay, well, this person kind of grew up like me, so okay.
That's
you know, like I think that I'll have an understanding of how, and they'll understand how my mind works a little bit better and everything like that.
Right.
And the key is to branch outside of that comfort zone.
Right.
Is to say, hey, there's a different voice here that might have a unique perspective that I haven't yet considered.
Right.
And it's up to those that hire. Eventually, I'll be one of those people and everything that, you know, to kind of set the tone. So it doesn't matter if a studio does a lot of stuff and everything. What matters is who's actually doing the hiring and if they're doing it too.
Right.
So that's the big thing. You know, we need those people that are doing the hiring, showrunners, executives, you know, things like that. Like, you know, they are for the most part, like that is happening again, you know, but it's like, it's an ongoing conversation. We have to keep it up, you know, and a lot of times the only way that we'll reach parity is when, you know, we have just as many diverse voices doing the hiring as you know, as there are you know, non-diverse voices, you know, I guess, you know, like we just need to have like, you know, I don't want to give like an exact number or anything, but the only way that different voices are hired and they're raised up in the writer's room, you know, because a lot of the time what happens with you know, a writer that is more diverse and everything is that they'll get like one or a couple of jobs or something like that, and then they kind of fall off after their staff writing year or after story editor or something like that. And it's just like, no, like you'll never have diverse voices in television if the people that you're bringing in, you're not actually promoting them to the next levels and stuff like that so that they can learn and grow and be able to do the same thing. So it's like, it will be a self-perpetuating cycle if you know, if we don't get enough writers in there who then can, you know, rise through the ranks, you know, like everybody else.
Absolutely. Do you feel like sometimes the casting, are you involved ever in the casting concept meetings, like for your episodes and things like that? Do you feel...
Depends on the show. I should say depends on the show. But yes, I have been involved in them.
Because, so this was an issue that we only have 10 minutes. I have so many questions for you.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. Keep going. So we'll talk fast.
I'm just curious to hear your perspective. So, like, for example, on a show like Criminal Minds, there was so much talk about race, especially in the concept meetings. And, you know, we wanted basically everything always to be open. And then sometimes the writers would be hesitant to, for example, open up the bad guy role to a black actor.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean? They didn't want to.
I've done that myself. Like, I've honestly done that myself because, like it or not, representation in the media matters.
Yes.
And if we can try not to play into stereotypes and tropes, we'd prefer not to.
Yeah.
So I remember there was something particular, and it was a small role. It was a very small guest spot, and it was something with an attorney or something like that, and the line essentially alluded to the attorney being moderately incompetent. And it's just like, we had a person, like a group of background actors that we like to work with, and we wanted to, you know, promote somebody to like a speaking role and stuff like that. And one of our favorites, we had promoted into that role, but it was just like, but what are we saying as a whole if literally like the only black attorney that we see on the show is incompetent.
Not that confident, right?
Yeah, I'm like, that's probably not a good look for us.
Right.
So, I raised the concern, and we were just kind of like, oh yeah, that's probably not a good look. And so we, moved casting to a different person. We were able to find that particular person a different speaking role and stuff like that. So it's just like, you can.
I'm listening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, your picture froze. I was like,
sorry.
Oh no, they kicked us off.
Okay. No, it happens sometimes. It's Instagram bandwidth.
But yeah, so I think it's very important to have those conversations up front and often, because sometimes you don't even realize that you're reinforcing a bias.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what we're trying to guard against.
Totally. Totally. That makes sense. Sorry. Some of these comments I can't read too well because the white font is blending in with your roof. So for anyone who has a comment, just put them in the question box and I'll see if I have time to get to it. But I apologize. I'm having a hard time reading.
Oh, I see one comment though. It's unfortunate though because they take the role away from a black particular actor. We were able to find something else for them and everything. So it's like, yes, while that may happen, it's important to also provide, an alternative position for someone and something like that.
Right.
So I don't know, and it is a balance. You have to balance out how does this affect, or what message are we putting out to society as a whole, or what is that going to do to this actor or something like that. Yeah. So, it is a balance.
Totally. Before I run out of time, I also just wanted to ask about accents, because that's something that we come across a lot too. In the past, we've always asked for standard American, always, and a lot of, and I never really fully understood why everything had to be standard American when we live in America, where everyone has all sorts of different accents, And so I'm just curious to hear from you, because a lot of the feedback when we say, oh, we have a great actor, but they have a slight whatever, English accent, Australian accent, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, but we really need standard American because it takes place in Wisconsin, whatever. Yeah. Even though people in Wisconsin do have accents. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that. Are you ever open to that, or?
For me, it's not a big deal unless it's it's a definite attribute of the character that they are from. Let's say somebody is from, I think I had a character one time that was from, I can't remember if it was Kentucky or if it was Mississippi. I can't remember. Was it Mississippi? Oh, shoot. It was somewhere deep south. Okay. And we needed a believable Southern accent, which are incredibly hard to come by, especially being someone from the South. I can hear it immediately if it's real or if it's fake. I'm just like, no, that's totally fake. People don't sound like that. So, but the general Midwestern accent is kind of a good rule, to go by, because it's just then it appeals to the broadest possible audience. Yeah. I think that's probably the thing, is that you want an accent that can appeal to the broadest possible audience. Okay. And usually the general Midwestern accent is, everyone can understand it. Yeah. Everyone that, English as a first language, everyone can easily understand the general Midwestern accent. Right. And, and so, but for me, I'm it doesn't really matter if someone has an accent, and it doesn't matter if the character has that accent or not. Then I'm like, okay, great. Yeah. Any more more flavor is cool for me. Yeah.
Agreed.
So
with the 3 minutes we have left, I just wanted to ask really quick about, have you heard anything, whether it's your room or other rooms, have you heard anything? I know there's been some speculations in terms of writers having to tweak their storylines to adhere to new health standards coming out of this. Have you heard anything like that?
I haven't heard anything specifically about that. Granted, I'm going through the process right now of probably going to be starting up on a new show here at the end of the month. So we'll probably hear more advice given to us on that. But I haven't heard anything particular. I know for us, we for the first bit we would have to be on Zoom, you know.
Yeah.
So our writers' room will take place on Zoom, and that was on the last show I was on. The end of the season, the writers' room took place on Zoom.
Oh.
So because that was right when they started doing the lockdowns and everything.
Yeah.
So we just did the last season, or the very end, and I mean, like, we were pretty much done.
Oh, okay.
We were
That's
just
good.
working on the season finale. So it was just
What's gonna
like,
happen to all the poor writer PAs?
yeah, I wondered that. Actually, I wondered that. I was like, I had that gig, man. I know how that goes, you know? Like, I totally wondered that. I was just like, what happens to the assistants? I know we would still need a script coordinator. We would still need a writer's assistant. But then I was just like, but the writer's PA, there's no one to assist in that moment. So that's a great question, and I'd actually like to find out about that. I am curious about that. But as far as the COVID stuff, I haven't heard about anything definitely injecting it into the storyline, unless if I was on a medical show, though, like before when I was on The Good Doctor, maybe that would get factored in. You know what I mean? Because if you want to stay pretty current and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of other shows, you know, are escapism, you know, so they don't necessarily have to live in our world.
Right.
Granted, it is nicer when we can involve pieces of our world into it. So I don't know. It's really up to whoever the showrunner is or who the showrunners are as to whether or not they want to dive into, okay, this is taking place in a COVID world at this point.
Yeah.
So, you know.
We're down to the second, so before we get cut off, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. Such a blast
yeah,
to
of
talk to
course.
you.
Thank you.
You just dropped so much knowledge, and I really appreciate you.
I hope so, man. I felt like I rambled a lot, but thank you so much for having me.
It was so much fun. I so am glad to catch up with you and just see you and hear how you're doing, and it was just a blast personally for me. And we raised $50 for the ACLU.
Yay! All right, good work, you guys.
So it's not